everyone to today's podcast. And oh my goodness, I've just been having a quick chat to my guest today, and she has a very exciting van life in the USA. And I was just showing her my amazing Starbucks cups because if you are one of my audience, that I love my Starbucks coffee, but also collecting the very special mugs. But where she's from, I haven't been, but I'll let her share with you where she is. So today, my wonderful guest is Janice Laraine, is a brand strategist. She's a storyteller, an experienced designer redefining luxury through the lens of emotional hospitality. She's the founder of MADM Co. Now, that's an acronym, so we'll get to that in a minute. A hospitality focused studio helping boutique hotels, STR portfolios, and service based visionaries build emotionally intelligent brands that resonate. Her signature framework, Hospitality EQ, centers emotional intelligence as the true currency of trust in today's client and guest journeys. Through keynote sessions, digital touchpoints, and story driven design, Janice helps founders create experiences that feel intuitively aligned and impossible to forget. She is currently sharing her thought leadership on emotional hospitality across podcasts and events, including her upcoming session at the Independent Hotel Show in Miami. Now, guests, please a warm welcome to the amazing Janice. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me.
I know we could talk all day already because I'm just looking at, I've been looking at Janice's website and thinking to myself, oh my goodness, that emotional, that intuitive service, all about creating that guest experience that'll be memorable for all the right reasons. And we both love to
Mhm.
travel. We could certainly fill this podcast up and plus more. But let me ask you, Janice, MADM Co, the acronym for that, where are you at the moment? And yeah, what's your passion for doing this right now with your time?
Absolutely. So MADM, MADM, it is an acronym. It's short for quite a wordy name. It's short for Miss Adventurepreneur Design and Marketing. It was a happy accident. I started from my travels as Miss Adventurepreneur, and I ended up designing brands and websites for other businesses along the way for a long time before finding my way into hospitality. So what started as Miss Adventurepreneur became Miss Adventurepreneur Design and Marketing, and today it's just the abbreviated MADM, MADM Co. So I have a long background in traveling, in solo traveling, spending lots and lots of time in different places, different countries, and I fell into it as sort of part of me. I think just really understanding myself and understanding other cultures, other ways of service, hospitality. I learned a lot about myself from there. And fun fact, through traveling, solo traveling, I met my now husband.
Oh,
And so, yeah,
so you're no
so that
longer
brings us
solo traveling.
no longer solo traveling. I do solo every once in a while, with some of my girlfriends, especially those in business, right? And it's been great. We travel, we continue traveling together, and we do it out of a camper,
Wow.
a truck camper. So there's the van life there. That's allowed me to visit my clients, to do site visits for different properties, get a sense of really just the US. I'm based in the US. So home base changes on a weekly basis, but right now it is Kentucky. We are exploring a very well-known climbing area called the Red River Gorge, and I did get to go climbing the other day. That was a really really cool experience. There's something about climbing that I feel like relates to entrepreneurship and
Mm.
owning a business, trying a lot of different things. You're trying for to reach that hold, knowing that you could fall, but really you're not going to fall very far. You just get to look at the wall from a different angle, the rocks from a different angle, and give it another try. So that's been a really cool part of that journey as well. But yeah, based in the US, traveling out of a camper, and I really get to learn a lot about what is going on in today's travels in
Yes.
hospitality
Mhm.
and all of the the trends, the direction that we're going in hospitality today.
Yeah. Perfect. So thank you for that. I love the analogy, but I must say, Jenna, climbing a wall is not all climbing a rock face. It's not really my cup of tea, but I love the analogy. I'll trust you. I suppose now I'm more of that five-star luxury where I'm looking at the five-star hotel, not the stars in the sky. But it's quite funny. The lady who I had here in Australia on my podcast last week, Tracy Sheen, speaking all about AI, her and her partner have gone full time into van life, going all around Australia because, like yourself,
Love
she
that.
spent, phenomenal hundreds of days on the road and being away from home. So they also are able to visit, clients in Australia is a massive country and lots of places in between. So, like yourselves, van life has certainly opened up the opportunities for business owners,
Mhm.
not just to be in that one place, but to actually experience, particularly when we talk about hospitality. So look,
Exactly.
let's get chatting about this because that emotional intelligence, as I said, that intuitive service. How do we create those experiences? And now they're even talking about hyper personalization, aren't they? Why are aesthetics alone not enough in boutique hospitality today?
That's a good question. When we look at, I'll use this as an example. How many times have you gone into, let's say, a grocery store and you're picking out a wine bottle for whatever dinner, you're going to show up to, and you're just overwhelmed at all of the
Yes.
options there, right? So I experience that all the time. What we end up doing is we just have to look at the bottles on the shelves and pick based on design,
Mm,
maybe. So that's where aesthetics comes in. And beyond that, that's just what gets you to stop the scroll on Instagram or on TikTok, anywhere
mm,
someone may be consuming your content as a hotelier, right? So aesthetics is only going to stop it's what's expected now. It stops the
mm,
scroll. It grabs attention. That's great, but now we want to keep it. That's only going to get you in the game. It's not going to help you win it.
mm,
So in going back to the grocery wine aisle example, um, you have all of these different labels. One speaks to you, great. You pick it up, and I'll share my experience, right? I there was one that stood out to me because it was uh, the entire label was etched in the wine bottle,
mm,
and I'm like, ooh, okay. So let me take it out, pick it up, and so then at that point, I picked one out. This is stopping the scroll, and it's pretty, it's textured, it's got that textured
mm,
feel, already different. So that really helps sell that label or sell that particular
mm,
bottle, which the same can be true online, with your website, with your social media. So then I'm reading the label, I'm reading the descriptors, and it's like, okay, notes of oak, berry, bold, all of these descriptions. I'm like, okay, this is what I want for today,
mm,
uh, and so I buy it, and that's it, right?
mm,
Aesthetics can start the conversation, but really what's going to drive it home and allow guests to imagine themselves in your space is the next part that comes after, which is story.
yes.
So that's one piece.
Mm,
And then aesthetics today is just it's just expected. That's the bare minimum with
mm,
travelers today, especially wellness, luxury, some people who appreciate design, who appreciate a space to just breathe and relax, and
mm.
somebody who understands that, or a brand who understands that, that's really going to show through in not only the design in person and layout, but aesthetics and how they show up online.
Yes.
So that's just baseline, bare minimum.
Yeah. And look, you're so true. We've always said, we eat through our eyes as well. When you look at that menu the description is amazing. And then it comes,
Yeah.
onto the plate and you know that the chef has put their whole heart into this. Everybody's behind it in the kitchen and it looks amazing. But it has to have that story, and the story goes with what's been detailed on the menu, perhaps on what the wait person has said about where the produce is from as well. But it it's gotta have a story, but then that story's got to follow up. Because I don't know about you, Janice, but I picked some wines like that thing. Wow, that's so pretty. And you've opened it up and you go, because it tastes like vinegar. And
Yes.
then so sometimes the aesthetics may be telling us a story and it looks fantastic, particularly on the website as well. And then you get there and it can be have a real different opinion. Have you ever experienced that where,
Mhm.
because I know I certainly have been sold on the wording, sold on the
Oh,
beautiful
yes.
pictures, and you've got there thinking, this doesn't look like what's what. So do you find that a lot with your travels?
I Not a lot actually, but I have had that experience
Mm,
pretty recently in Scotland this summer. Granted, when you have the aesthetics, right, being that baseline minimum, right, to grab that attention. Okay, now we want to keep that attention. There's that
mm,
story. That's the copy on your website, the photos, really what you're sharing. And that's not to say that it's two bed, three bath,
mm.
hot tub in the bathroom. Like it's leading with story. And so in that example, that means come soak in your own private hot tub after a hike
Mm,
in whatever hike is nearby your property. Let's say, for example, that's a whole different idea, a whole different vibe.
yeah.
That's leading with story, right? Not just
Mm,
sharing the details. So making sure that that online presence matches the in-person experience. There's
mm.
three parts to that brand journey, by the way, and we can dive into that. But making sure that the expectation upfront, because I've had that with wine as well, right? Pick up the wine bottle, looks really cool, read the description, exactly what I want. And then I go home and I try it and I'm like, shh, I am never buying this again. Um, it was a cool experience. It was not what I expected. The
Mm,
wine's not bad, but
yes.
and the same can be true in hospitality as well. So just making sure that the follow through, right? We don't want to sell something that we don't actually offer. Um, Travelers, and I'm sure you yourself, right, whoever's listening, you would hate that. You would hate being sold to and misled, right? I always joke about that with my husband when I feel like, oh, I've been misled. When I find something that doesn't match what I was led to believe. So hopefully, and there's a story within every property. You don't have to follow trends. You don't have to follow anything but your own unique footprint, your own unique story. There is something there. That's exactly what I help my clients to figure out. I know a lot of you are owner operators. And so you're just in it in the back end. And that's where I come in and, okay, what resonates with guests? What can we improve on in terms of emotionally connecting? What are those touch points where we can make sure that it resonates throughout the entire guest experience? So making sure that matches, right? Online, in person, right? We want to make sure that that matches because that's the last thing we want is when it doesn't match up and we're misled.
And it's so because that website is that first point of contact, or that social media, isn't it? They've
Hmm.
made that connection with you, your business, your venue, well before you even know who they are. So to me, it's that first experience of seeing the property. If we look at a boutique hotel, reading those beautiful stories, and you're right, where they talk about, you've hiked, if you've hiked through the glens of Scotland or wherever it may be, and then you arrive, you've got this beautiful hot tub. It's telling them also, it's showing what you can do in the area, but then it's ensuring that when you get there, as you rightly said, are they truly offering that? Or do you get there and find, oh, well, that's only through the months that end without a Y on a blue
Yeah.
moon and a blah, blah, blah. And you think, great, if I'd known that, I could have possibly had, changed my plans, or I wouldn't have got all my hopes built up to do this. So once you have that one poor experience through something that you've been misinformed about, then it really impacts on your whole stay because you start to feel inside, well, how much else is right or wrong? What else can I
Right.
believe in them? You've talked about these four emotional checkpoints. Every hospitality brand should evaluate. Would you like to share a little bit more on those? Because, I love touch points and checklists because you can you can have them in your head, but as a business owner or as a CEO, you have to share them with your team because they can't read your mind. So
Yes.
although sometimes you think they do. So would you like to share those with us? That'd be fantastic.
Yeah, so I have what I call the three-part brand journey that really drives those ultimately the direct booking. The bookings is what we want, right? We want to drive visibility. It's in three parts. You have the online experience. That's anywhere someone sees you for the first time online. That can be social media. That can be your website. So online, in person, the actual stay, the actual in-person experience, and then post checkout. Now, within each of those brand journey, or each part of the brand journey, excuse me, the you have the visuals, right? In the online, you have the visuals, you have the story. Now, in person is where we can kind of expand on those emotional touch points, emotional checkpoints. So, one example, I'll touch on. You mentioned earlier having a story through food or sharing the story through food. I went to a boutique stay in Scotland, and one thing that just stood out to me in my mind, first of all, was that they called me. They said hello, right? They greeted me by name, my first and my last name, which one was a super big deal because I was not the only Janice staying there with them that week. So, that can be just one emotional touch point, right? Like reaching out prior to check-in, asking, why are you visiting? What brings you to this area today? You can create an experience for that person just from getting that information beforehand, right? And now it's like, ooh, why are they asking? So in that example, they asked if we want to do if we want to choose our meals, our there were some meals that were like three-course meals, right? So we there was a seafood platter, and I understood once we sat at dinner, whatever night that was, why they asked us to choose the meal. So this seafood platter, they have to actually speak with the fishermen of the island. This is an island in Scotland. It's Isla, where a lot of Scotch is made, and so they have to communicate with those with the fishermen. And so we're at dinner, and they're explaining these clams came from this part of the island, and it was
Oh,
fished by McShamus, I don't know, whatever his name is. And then these lobsters come from this southern cove in this area of the island, and it was picked by the lovely so and so. Like they knew these people by name,
gosh. Yeah.
and the food became a map of the island.
Wow.
Not
Yes.
only is this story, but it's an actual map of the island. One, two, I walked away from that experience realizing my money went into this, not only the stay, but it supported the people. Like I could see it supporting the people
Yes.
on the island. They
Mm,
were so rooted in the community, in, of course, their own experience that they were
mm.
providing, but they were so in touch with the community. They knew the people at a particular distillery that I went to because I had left my umbrella there, and they were like, "Oh, we can call so and so to get it, and he'll bring it over." And I'm like, "Oh my goodness!" They just know everybody on the island.
Yeah.
So I touched on a couple of touch points there. So now we talked about before I even checked in,
Mm.
then right as soon as I checked in, greeting me by name. Again, big deal for me because I'm usually the only Janice, but there were two Janices on staying that week, and then through the food, right? Through the food. So that's part three, and then another touch point there, emotional touch point was as my husband and I were getting ready to leave and make plans, but we did not have plans for the next for the next day. And she was so the owner was so kind in making recommend. Oh, where are you going? Oh,
Mm.
you should stay at this place. I know so and so. And this is not even in Scotland, or sorry, not even on the island. This is in another part of Scotland
Mm.
entirely, right?
Yes.
And
Yes.
so just they touched on so many different areas that like now I will recommend their place to anybody,
Mm.
especially for those who really care about where their money. I could see where my money was going.
Yes.
I could see
Yeah.
how much care they put into it, and I just I will carry with that with me, and my husband too. I will carry that with me forever.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah.
And what a beautiful story. And thank you so much for sharing that with us because we see more and more today the connection between venues and the community, whether it's that local community where they're supporting the suppliers, like exactly like that Scottish
Yeah.
island, or it's that little bit broader, or they're employing those in the local areas. But we also see that's a really strong reason for people seeking out employment in those hospitality venues as
Mhm.
well, don't we? Particularly with Gen Z and certainly with Alpha, they're seeking out those hotels and boutique spaces that actually are doing more than just keeping
Mhm.
up the economy for the tourists, so to speak, or
Yes.
or offering a product or service, which is still very good, but it's just that next step, that connection with community. So let's give a plug because Europeans and particularly probably some of my far-flung cousins living in Scotland would love to know exactly what was the name of that hotel that you stayed at, an island.
Oh gosh, it might be super butchered. I pronounce it as Glengadale or Glenegadale. I'll share with you Glenegadale House. They're award winning. They're very warm. They're a couple. They have kids that live on the island. Like I know their story now too.
Yes, yes.
And the island is called Isla. It's when you read it, it reads Islay, but it's Isla, pronounced over there. And they're doing great work, a great
Yeah,
job.
yeah.
Um, yeah, and there's other examples I have of that, like, emotional touch point, because today, in doing my research today, travelers today, more than half of them, we care about local authentic experiences. We
Yes.
want we want to know, we're curious where our money is going.
Mhm.
And every opportunity that the owner, every opportunity you can get to highlight some of that throughout
Mm.
the stay. And that's not only on the property and the property story or the layout, the design, that's also in through the staff. That's also through,
Yes.
if you commission the art, that's also
Mm.
highlighting the artist. There was another stay I had in Scotland where this will be a short one, but I had a wonderful stay. It was very lovely. It was very exactly what I wanted, just peace and tranquility. And so as we were checking out, I turned around to take a picture of the hotel, the front of the hotel. I wanted to remember it, and literally moments before I snapped the picture, the owners stepped into the frame. So they're actually in the photo, and we laughed about it. We ended up talking just right there for, I think, it felt like an hour. It was probably 30 minutes. My husband was not very happy when I came back because I did not know it was going to be that long. But in that time, they told me how they turned I think it was the backyard space into a whiskey garden. And I was like, oh, I understand why, they had this curated space. It came out of COVID. So they had that outdoor space. They brought me in and showed me the map that an artist had made of what that town looked like before the actual town came. So it was a distillery. The town was named for the distillery. That was there first. And then they had someone paint all of that. They showed me pictures of their kids. They told me about what they were dreaming of next, and that was all just from, like, I checked out, but I was still kind of a guest, and
Yes,
I'll recommend their
yes.
hotel to anybody staying in that
Yes.
area.
Yeah.
So
And
just that, yeah.
yeah, and how beautiful again, it's those sharing of stories that makes that strong connection and those lifelong memories. That's what's so key. You'll be talking about this in 40, 50 years and say, there I was, and that just through this recommendation, I was able to go there and then I spent time. And that's what makes the difference between just having a holiday and having a memorable experience for whatever the reason that you're there and that
Mm.
stays with you forever. Um, how do brands unintentionally create dissonance and what should they be doing instead? Because yeah, I think a lot of people will go into business, they may have a really great skill set, but they don't know everything. And therefore, but we all know as small business operators, we try to do everything until we get to that point that we realize, could we do it better if we've got extra help? What's our offering? So would you like to share some your wonderful knowledge on that, Janice?
Yeah. So going back to aesthetics and
Mm,
story, right? What the impression we're leading and sharing online has to translate to the guest
mm,
experience. So one very easy, not easy, but like one very straightforward way that this dissonance can be created is through the staff. Like if you have that story and you haven't shared that with your
mm,
staff, you have that and you haven't shared that with the people, anybody that any guest would ever come in contact with, even if they're not staff, even if it's like the person coming to do the landscaping, the
mm,
maintenance, the person coming to do to clean the pool, right? Having setting the expectation that, hey, we have some, making sure that it shows up, that story or the
yes.
expectation that you've sold online, making sure that it shows up in person. That has to be followed through because you know what? We're not going to remember when it's not going to stand out in our minds if a stay was very smooth and
Mm,
nothing super ruffling happened,
yes.
right? But the moment something is off, oh, that sticks
Yes.
in our heads for a while.
Mm,
And it's just like you don't want that. You don't want to be associated with that, right? You don't
no.
want your property to be associated with that. You want that emotional connection. Guests are looking for that. And honestly, like you were saying earlier, when there is a memorable connection or when the overall stay has become memorable in a
Mm,
person's head, that translates into advocacy.
yes.
When that story, especially going back to the story, right? What
Mm,
what is it
mm,
when there are so many boutique hotels and short-term rentals that are on paper very similar in terms of services, amenities, offerings, right? When you have all of these
mm,
places that are very similar to each other, what's going to stand out? We can do that through story, through
yes.
um, and that can mean depending on
Mm,
whatever is unique about your property, right? I can come in and do that for you, but uh, sharing that story and making sure that it shows up through your staff, that it shows up through your messaging online, that it shows up through how people speak to your guests in person, right? What you share in
mm,
person if you're offering food and beverage, things like that. If you're offering wellness, making sure that it's all there throughout. Once that's
mm,
clear, if you have clarity in that story and you've anchored that throughout the entire guest experience, not only assuming that person has a really great experience, which in that case I
yeah.
feel like they would, right? They're going to have a great experience, but now they have clarity in what makes you unique,
Yes.
that when they go and advocate, there's clarity in the story that they're telling on your
Mm,
behalf. That's free
yeah.
marketing
Yes.
and that drives direct bookings.
Yeah.
It's all in making sure that every touch point, even if they make a recommendation or a referral to you, that person, is it easy for that person to find you online?
Yes.
And
Mm,
is the story that that person was being is the story that that person was told about your property, does it match wherever they
yes.
find you online? So
Yes.
making sure that that all, you don't want to start off based on mistrust,
Mm, yeah.
based on dissonance from the get-go.
Mm,
Make it easy for people to refer you, for people to advocate for you, that free marketing,
mm,
free press at a
yes.
certain point, right?
Mm,
Be ready for press at any given moment
yes.
because
Mm,
as people advocate for you, someone else is going to catch on, and that could very well be press.
yes. Yeah. And you're so true. It's having all the staff know the story and be part of that. Whether they, it's the gardener, it's the maintenance person, it's the person who
Yes.
greets you in the foyer, in the bar, the entertainment area, accommodation, wherever it may be, it's everybody is a part of that. And like yourself, I love traveling throughout Europe and particularly America. And it was a couple of years ago, I was in down in San Diego and we visited one of the casinos down there. And what was quite interesting was as I was driving in, the gardener actually stopped and waved hello. And I thought, there
Aw,
they are, they're working, they've got their focus, but that focus was that gardener. Now, I wouldn't have remembered that gardener if he hadn't turned around. I would have just driven in. The garden's
right.
absolutely spectacular, mind you. But the story would have started inside because when I did go inside, I was greeted by this lovely young chap. But it was the garden, and that after all these years, actually, it was before COVID. still stays with me because he turned around and he stopped. He looked like in my eyes as I'm driving in. It wasn't just a, oh, a flick of the hand, yeah, I've done my job. It was that real deep
Right.
connection of hello, or welcome. And I thought that makes a
Oh,
difference. And we hear so much about, I love going to Disney and, doing their courses, and it's that same thing there, whether it is the people maintaining the parks, the stopping, the connecting.
mhm.
But when you see that go out across all teams in all businesses, that's what
Yeah.
sets them apart. And as you rightly said, Janice, is then turning our guests into advocates. But you've got to make sure that that is replicated time and time again, because how often it's not only if we're being recommended to go to a place or we have a disappointing experience at a particular venue.
Mm,
If it is part of a group, a chain of a brand, then the next time it doesn't matter where you are in the same country or even overseas, you go, I don't know. I had that experience, and it could be thousands of miles away. No, I've had that experience, and it was poor. Whether it was hotels, whether it's car rentals, we keep that in our mind, don't we? So you're not
we
only
do.
exposing your own business, but if you're part of that larger brand, you can really cause that disappointing to have that ripple effect. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm.
And have so many people share that for you. Disney's a
Yes.
really good example of that. All
Mm.
that story is woven throughout the entire, doesn't matter who you talk to,
Mm.
doesn't, and I'm impressed. I don't know how they do it, but they've found a way to do it. And I know it's important, right? That's a really
Yes.
good example of
Mm.
making sure that that story and that magic
Mm.
is part of every touch point for the guest. And so the same concept is at play here in
Mm.
hospitality, making sure that it's at every touch point, whether you have staff or not, whether you
Mm.
have occasional staff or not. Because imagine what that gardener did for you, right? Like
Yes.
that
Yeah.
weight. Now
Mm.
you have it in your head that it's like, oh my gosh, imagine the rest of the people who are
Yeah.
employed at the property, you know?
Yes, yeah.
Um,
And I think,
yeah.
you think, well, if somebody cares enough about that and where they are in that organizational structure, I think, wow, that vision and the values of that business have been shared and then have been modeled, all those actions and behaviors, not just from their immediate team leader, but from, the top person right through that whole organization. And that's where values are so important, aren't they? Whether it is a small business or whether it is a larger organization, is everybody aware of those, and are they congruent with the employees and therefore congruent with what they share with their guests when they come through that
Exactly.
door?
Exactly. And
Yeah.
you don't want to have to, you, what I would love, right, for any hotelier is for the guests, sorry, not the guests, the employee, the staff to
Mm.
really know that story because
Yes.
then they're empowered to
Mm.
make those emotional touch points for the guest.
Yes.
There's no back and forth having to check in. It can be as simple as, we're the type of property that allows our staff to write a personal handwritten note and put it on the
Mm.
pillow for the guest
Yes.
because we
Yes.
got this data. Hey,
Mm.
this couple is celebrating their 25th anniversary. Let's do XYZ with a handwritten note.
Mm.
Let's do maybe a candle to commemorate that, and they can
Yes.
burn it or not
Mm.
depending on if they are sensitive to smell, right? Now
Yes.
you're being
Yes.
mindful of that
Mm.
sense. Um, Imagine the ripple effect, right? When you have clarity in that story that each employee, each staff can carry that through, anchor it through each touch point for the guest, no
Yes.
matter who
Mm.
it is
Yes.
that they're
Yeah.
working with or talking to,
Mm.
that it's just your property now becomes part of their story. We
Yes.
talk about storytelling a lot.
Mm.
It's just there's that we crave that emotional connection. We crave just really being seen and
Yes.
understood and not
Yeah.
just being another number or it being transactional.
That's right, very much so. And it is empowering the team, isn't it, Janice? On
It
my
is.
recent trip to Arizona, last month, it was that same thing. And I've shared it before that I was really amazed how many of the frontline team had been empowered to make changes with the menu without having to go
Mhm.
back and speak to the chef and then come back out. Now, look, I'm sure if there was something really difficult, but they were really, really aware that, I'd say, oh, I really like that. Oh, gee, it's got a lot of garlic in it, and I can't eat that. And they go, oh, madam, we can certainly, remove the garlic from that. Or if you know, if you feel that sauce could be spicy, we could either put it on the side, or the chef can certainly make it mild. They had that empowerment, they had that permission to make those alterations, which saved all this time. But it made me feel really good. I thought, you're not just waiting there with your notepad or your whatever, you've got some device to take the actual order. You're actually listening to the conversation that's been had around the table and allaying the fears or the thoughts or the concerns straight
Exactly.
away. And I love that. And I thought that's a team that's being given that empowerment and that care from the back of house to the front of house. And to me,
Hmm.
it's all one, isn't it, when it comes to
Yeah.
food in particular? But it's just making that connection. And as you rightly said, we want to be seen. Like, we're paying a lot of money. And it's quite interesting when I was looking at, and you've probably seen it too, some recent research globally, how, you know, the cost of living is impacting majority of countries. I don't think there's too many countries. I suppose there's probably a
Hmm.
handful that everything's going fine, but here in Australia, the cost of living is going higher. So people are thinking, well, what sort of holiday? You know, we're coming up to our big summer holidays here for 6 weeks for school in December and through to January. When people would look at, you know, Australia is one of those countries, Janice. Have you been here?
I have, yes.
It's,
Yeah.
it's a magnificent country, but it's quite
It
expensive to
is.
travel from one place to another in Australia. So
Hmm.
research was just saying that a lot of the yeah, a lot of people who would go on a bigger holiday are reducing those. But what's interesting globally is the luxury end of travel, and the solo, particularly solo women, has really elevated. And so when you are,
Yeah.
no matter where you are or how hard you've saved or worked, whether you're paying $10 or you're paying 10,000, you all want value. So it's giving them that value, but it's got to be memorable value, doesn't it? It's got to be
Mhm.
that emotional connection and that luxury of, and it doesn't even have to cost you anything. You know, like Janice, she was just saying right at the very start,
Yeah.
it was using your first and last name. That was memorable. It didn't cost anybody any money, or it remembered what your
Mhm.
order was, or just that lovely smile, or that connection of, well, how was your hike? That it, you know, I think sometimes you find that people think, oh, you've got to spend all this money to have all these memorable moments. You don't, do you?
You really don't.
No.
You really truly don't.
Mm,
And that's the beauty of it. Because going back to the other Scotland boutique hotel I stayed at, the owners just stepped into the frame and we had an authentic
yes.
conversation. That
Yes.
cost them nothing. They
Mm,
were passionate about what they do. You know, and that sticks. That sticks in my mind for me. Same for
mm.
for the staff that's making these changes. And actually, I wanted to touch on that because you know what that does when the staff are empowered? It also removes you, the owner, or you, the chef, as the
Mm.
bottleneck, going
Yes.
back and forth between
Yes.
and figuring out, you know, things are just so much more smooth
Mm.
when it's operated in that way, or when staff can be empowered in that way. And again, that goes back to clarity in that story, in the values, in the vision, in the mission, um, because it's just so beneficial to everybody
Yes.
involved.
Yeah, it really does. And you're right, it stops that bottleneck, but it also makes, I feel, that team unity even stronger, because you know in the past it's always been the us and them, and oh, we don't want to disturb the chef, what are they going to say? But now it's this
Yeah.
joy of bringing it together. And the same is sharing the menu. You know, you were saying about, you know,
Hmm.
that wait person sharing with you about where the clams were and the lobsters and things, just really made it. I think the most amazing experience, I was attending National Restaurant Association a few years ago in Chicago, and we went to a restaurant, and there was the wait person came up, no menus, and he just told us the whole menu. And like, this wasn't just like a three,
Wow.
three, three. This was a massive but menu, but every item had this amazing story. And then when there was about 17 of us and said, you know what, you just order for us. We're Australians, we're in the food and
Mm.
hospitality industry, and it was phenomenal. But it was, he just sold it. He could have been selling us, you know, anything. It didn't matter. It just sounded fantastic. But it
Yeah.
was. But it, once again, it was just that engagement with the story.
Mm.
So um, I touched on before about those solo travelers, and you were talking about solo travelers as well. And
Hmm.
there's that security factor, but it's more more than just, oh, that security factor of, well, am I safe and secure here? Being not just a
Hmm.
solo female traveler, but any traveler, around the world. But you're talking about an emotional security, not just aesthetics. Can you just broaden that? What's this emotional security, Janice, that you speak of?
It's in short, it's like healing that inner child, right?
Mm,
You're stepping away from the safety and security of your home per se, your home base,
mm,
and you're stepping into this new place. And if you've been a solo female traveler, you've probably gotten loads and loads of information about the locks that you can use for your hotel door, the chain, the little, all of the things, like a personal alarm device, maybe pepper spray, all of these different things.
mm,
And it's just like, okay, but how can we welcome and create that sense of security
mm.
beyond this home away from home? Just we understand that you have a gluten intolerance or you're definitely allergic to gluten. Just so you know, we have
Yes.
done XYZ on this plate for you today
Mm.
because I don't have this intolerance, but just imagine the person that's just like, there's gluten in everything. There's
Yes.
gluten in
Yeah.
everything. Or even
Mm,
someone who's vegan.
mm,
There's dairy. There's, things are cooked
mm,
in meat, fat, right? There's all of these different things
mm.
that for that person, you just have to be on high alert all the time, what you're putting
Yes.
in your body, where you're stepping into.
Mm,
Imagine just being a space where they can actually truly relax and not have to worry about that.
mm. Yes.
It's really, I will share from my experience. I did an anniversary trip with my husband to Mexico. We stayed at this all inclusive adults resorts or couples resort. And for the first time ever, they literally took care of everything,
Mm.
everything from the food to the even the laundry. Like it was weird for me a little bit at first.
Yeah.
I haven't, you have a sense of control over it. You're like cooking,
Yes.
you're doing your own laundry, all of these things. They locked the rooms for us. Like I guess we forgot to close the back sliding door. Like all of these things, what I realized stepping away from that experience, I realized he and I could actually truly be together. We weren't
Yeah.
worried about taking
Mm,
care of a dog. We weren't worried about what we were going to cook for dinner. We weren't worried
mm.
about like we got to shop, we got to do we didn't
Yes.
have to do anything.
Mm.
And that was a level of care I will never, that was like amazing because
Yes.
I realized how much value there is in being there, being present, and not having to worry about those things.
Mm.
Now, that's on a day-to-day basis.
Yes.
Imagine tenfold for somebody with kids, somebody with,
Mm.
gluten intolerance, somebody who's vegan, someone who's traveling solo,
Mm.
um, you know, matching the space to fit their needs, their emotional
Yes.
needs.
Yes. Yeah.
Um, and you can ask them that. You can always ask, like, oh, what brings you, again, at the beginning, what brings you to the area? Why are you visiting? Can we essentially, internally, right? Can we create a unique experience for them
Yes.
because
Mm.
we've asked those questions? It's
Mm.
not just another person, passing through our property, passing through that room, right?
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
So
And
there's
I
a
think,
little bit of
yeah, sorry. It's
there's a little bit of like taking care of that kid, that inner kid,
yes.
adult.
Yeah.
Um, we just want to be seen and
Mm.
understood. We
Yes.
don't want to be seen as difficult,
Mm.
and we just want to be loved. That's really it. That's
Yeah.
really the heart of this emotional
Mm.
security. Um, we just want to be seen. We want
Mm.
to feel understood.
Yes, yeah. I think the other thing too, asking those questions, and I know just about everybody is over doing surveys when you check out of a hotel. Can you please fill out this survey? And you think, what's the point? I'll make a note here, and some will get back to you, and whether they're small or big, that they will get back, which is fantastic. But many of them
Mhm.
don't. You just do this survey and you feel like I'm just ticking a box. So now that a number of hotels are doing that now, sending out, what do you like? Why are you coming? I even know myself thinking, well, why do they need this information? But anyway, I'll give it. But when they actually use that information, like exactly what you're saying, Jen, is you're going, now I see that connection, and it's certainly well worth it, which is fantastic. Now, you mentioned that trip to Mexico, and you did say a dog. I don't know whether you were traveling with a dog, but we are seeing this more and more now, where people are traveling with dogs, whether they're in a van, whether they're in a hotel. How have you seen that change? I know this is an off the cuff question, Janice, but
No
being
problem.
in whether it's that luxury boutique hotel, traveling in a van, how have you seen the change between people and hotels accepting pets?
It's been interesting to see. I
Mm,
think I always get super excited when every once in a while there's a short-term rental that's like, we accept pets, or we accept what is it? Your furry guests. I love the
yes.
way that they
Oh,
phrase it.
yes.
They're welcome, and there's a space. It's kind of like a kid. A lot of family friendly spaces are
Mm,
not actually family
no,
friendly. You
no.
have, especially in hotels, right? You have to book two rooms. You
Mm,
have to figure out like the layout, maybe that hasn't been considered. You have F&B that looks like still chicken fingers and chips or
yes.
fries,
Yeah.
and you have like imagine if we put a little bit of thought for the family friendly stay, right, around the kids.
Mm,
I don't know what babysitting looks like, but especially the older kids, they want something more than arts and crafts, right?
yes.
Um, it's that same level of care or a very similar level of care for the pets.
Mm,
And so when you open up your doors, not only to said pets, but when you take it a step further and it's like now there's bowls and there's
mm.
maybe a little what is it, a dog handkerchief, or
Oh,
the
yes,
little
yes. The kerchief they
ties
wear
that they
around.
wear.
Yes. Looks very
Yeah,
stylish.
and like dog toys, dog treats,
Mm,
things like that. I actually also we have a Airbnb in California, and we welcome pets.
mm.
We love dogs. We have like a little dog toy box. They're welcome to use. Don't worry about bringing all of the things. We
Yes.
have it.
Mm,
Maybe bring your dog food, but otherwise, we have all of the things,
mm.
because we understand. We just, again, we want, when we're choosing a stay, sometimes we're limited by where we can stay based on the people that
Yes.
we bring.
Mm.
And so again, going back to just feeling understood and not
Yes.
being
Yes.
excluded.
Mm.
And I think it's wonderful seeing that people are doing that. You see that
Yes.
in flights now as
Mm.
well. More people are traveling or flying with their dogs.
Mm.
And so we would expect the accommodations part of hospitality to
Yes.
also follow suit. So
Mm.
it's been really cool to see.
It has. It's very, very different. Defining luxury hospitality today, it's about that presence, about that connection, not just perfection. Can you share a little bit on that?
Yeah. Um, that goes back to the emotional
Mm,
connection. Luxury, you have nowadays, we as human beings care about experiences. We want to
mm,
collect experiences. If we had a bookshelf, we want that bookshelf to be filled with chapters of our story, with
mm,
the people who have witnessed our story, with the people who have been involved in our story. And that extends to hospitality, that extends to the space that you're providing for those stories to emerge, for those
mm,
stories to develop. And so we're in this era of collect memories, collect experiences, not things. And so the way that can look like in hospitality is it's the same. Let's collect space, or let's curate space for
mm,
those stories to unfold. We don't necessarily care so much about, we as travelers, we're not looking for the gold and the chandelier and all
mm.
of these things that are in the design. Now, if said hotel or said space is leaning on that because they're speaking to a specific person that does enjoy,
Yes.
that's one thing. But in terms of luxury, right, it's not. We even in apparel, we see the quiet, laid back luxury. We're not loud anymore with the
Yes.
clothing. It's similar in
Mm,
hospitality, right? What do we stand for? Even when you look at the way people are investing today, when
mm.
you look at the way people are buying actual material things,
Yes.
they care about backing the company.
Mm.
Sometimes we don't have a choice, but a lot of times we do look at, who are the owners? What
Yes.
charities are they donating to?
Mm.
Is my money actually going there? Same for the apparel, right? Is this apparel that can be that has been reused or recycled in some way?
Mm.
Are they committed to sustainability? Because I want to be a part of that, right?
Yes.
Whatever those values mean to you,
Mm.
travelers are looking for their values being reflected to them in your property, in your stay. So luxury is just really connecting with them in that way. And
Yes.
that's usually through emotional resonance. It's
Mm.
usually through making sure that they can see their values reflected in you, that they can see their story unfolding in your space, that
Yes.
they can feel connected. And now that's something that they can take with them, hopefully forever,
Mm.
but they'll take that story forward to their friends, their family, and end up
Yes.
being a really big advocate for you.
Yeah, which is fantastic. We're coming to
Yeah.
the end of the questions, and as I said, I'm sure we could speak for many more hours. And I've really loved hearing just your knowledge and your just thirst for adventure as well, and to share that with your
Yeah.
clients. So before I ask the last question, what I'd love to for you to share, because I will put all your links in the show notes. But Janice, how can people connect with you, and where do you operate? I know you're operating, from America, but is that also a global perspective as well? So I'll give you a moment just to share that information, please.
Yes. So I am a world traveler. I spent 2 months in Europe, in many places in Europe we won't get into right now, multiple countries. So I'm based in the US. I have traveled extensively around the world, and I love finding those stories. That's what I love to do actually, is when people share that, I'm like, is it highlighted online? Is it on your website? No, let's talk about that, right? Because that's like such a wonderful moment of connection. That's a really good opportunity
Mm.
for connection for those who have not heard of or seen you yet. So, anyways, short answer is yes, US and beyond. And then you can find me, actually, Janice Laraine. I am the only Janice Laraine on the internet, I believe. So you can find me through that name on LinkedIn, and on Instagram, at MADM.co. Again, I'll share the links afterwards. Yeah, so you'll be able to. I also have a freebie if anybody is interested. I
Mm.
have a hospitality EQ scorecard just for you to assess where you are in terms of emotional resonance, emotional connection. Because a lot of times what you can really do to build that story and to build that connection with your guests is ask them yourself.
Yes.
See what it
Yes.
is that
Mm.
resonates with them, and see if there's something that we can pull out of that information, that we can reflect that, because the other guests, other potential guests, are going to be looking for the same stuff.
Yes.
So we want to meet them there.
Yeah, definitely. No, I'll put the link in there for the scorecard as well. So our final question, Janice, is what is one overlooked moment that quietly builds loyalty?
It's that emotional connection.
Mm.
Any chance for that, and actually it can be as simple as complimenting a guest,
Yes. Yeah.
genuine compliment. And
Mm.
actually, I do cover that. I have, if you sign up for the scorecard, you'll also, what I'll do for for your listeners is, you'll also get access to 7 different touch points that I
Mm.
recommend,
Perfect.
complimenting a guest being one of them.
Mm.
There's just so many different ways that you can do that. And if you don't mind, I'll actually go through an example right now with you.
Perfect.
So I have, this will be between me and you. I have 3 cards here.
Hmm.
They each have different questions. If you choose one, I'll read the question on the back. So you can choose middle, right, or left.
I will pick the middle one, please.
Middle one. Okay, so the back of the question, or the back is a question that says, if a guest could describe your brand in one sentence, what would you hope they'd say?
You
So
want
I
me to
won't put
answer
you on
this?
the spot. I won't put you on the spot unless you have an answer. But
So what was it?
yeah.
So describe my brand in one sentence. Mm,
Hmm.
gosh. Yeah, it's authentic,
I love that.
well known,
Mm.
values driven, hospitality focus. Yes. Yeah. I
I
don't know.
love
I
that.
mean, I know they're just words, but bringing that together, and I love questions like that because it really gets you thinking what it, because it's found, my whole foundation is based on values. So they're critical,
Mhm.
but those questions really get you thinking, Janice. Yeah. So
Yeah.
we'll
So
definitely
that's
put those in there. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's actually an example. It's a sneak peek inside the work that I do
Yes.
in my business with
Mm,
my clients under what's called the brand concierge. This is just a sneak peek at some of the questions I ask because when we look at how you answer, right?
mm.
How my client answers, when we look at that, we want to also make sure that that's being reflected in their guests because that may not always be true. There might be a little bit
Yes.
of dissonance, which is
Yes.
okay. That's a really
Mm,
great opportunity to shift that a little bit, and we can make sure that that shows up in your messaging, in your marketing, and in
mm.
different ways to make sure that it's actually clear throughout the
Yes.
guest experience.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that
Because
was just a little sneak peek, but that's like kind of an example of an emotion, like just connecting a little bit, asking the guest, like, what was your favorite part of the stay?
yes. Yes.
And now
Yeah.
you have data, and you don't have to even wait until they check out, right? You don't even have to wait until that point. You can ask them right there. Tell me what was your favorite part?
Yes.
And now, if you get enough information on the spot, you just have the staff or whoever take note,
Mm.
and maybe that's an opportunity for you to reflect that back in the experience, or maybe
Yes.
double down on it.
Mm. And
So
share
yeah,
that.
a little sneak peek.
Yeah, and then share it with other guests because you're thinking to yourself,
Exactly.
all right, if that was something that was a real standout to them, then who's not to say that it won't be for others?
Hmm.
And it may be something that you didn't even realize that you were doing or that you were saying that's made
Exactly.
such a positive impact. Because I think we can become very blinded at times about well what we are offering, but it's so much more from that when
Exactly.
we can see it from our guests' eyes. Oh, I have absolutely loved this conversation with you, Janice. I wish you all the very best with your
Thanks.
future travels and hearing more about them. As that, I will put the links to your website as well as to the scorecard and looking at those 7 touch points. I really appreciate that. I know my listeners have taken a lot away from today, but that whole focus is that emotional connection. How do they share that story and that brand and to make that all encompassing impact that they're wanting with their
Mm.
guests so that guests not only returns but
Yeah,
recommends.
of
So thank you so much, Janice. I really appreciated your time.
course. Thank you. Thanks for having me. If anyone has any questions, you can find me at any one of those places online. I'd be happy to chat through what your story is and
But
answer any questions.
wonderful. Thank you.